Hey, it's Mr. Sorensen, and welcome to the wood shop. I don't know if you noticed this, but Christmas is in the air up and down the street of my neighborhood. There are lights and blow-up reindeer and Santa Claus and all sorts of stuff at night lit up in every yard. Now, we're going to do a project that relates to that. So you see here to the side of me some trees. Now they could be a Christmas tree, they could be any kind of tree you want it to be, as long as it's a conifer, because that's about what they look like. But we're going to make this tree using all the supplies plus a little more that you've gotten in your kit this time around. Now, though it looks like a tree, really what it is a measuring quiz in disguise. So you're going to have a lot of points on a ruler you got to find and measure and cut. But if you do it right, when you're done, you should end up with something that looks a lot like this right here. And it would make a great gift. Moms, dads, grandma, grandpa, uncle, aunt, neighbor next door. People would love to get this as a gift. And so we're going to work on it, and hopefully you have it done in time for Christmas and or in time for getting it turned in for a grade. But you could also give it away when you're done as a nice gift that you made. So let me take a second to show you how this tree is made. So I'm going to start by just looking at the contents of the bag, the kit that you're going to get. So you'll get a cutting list. I've got a sheet of paper in here. It tells me all the lengths of the pieces that I'm going to need. I've got some red and white beads that can be put on the tree. I've got the trunk of the tree, which is a little cylindrical shaped piece with a hole drilled in it. I've got a star that can go on the top. I've got my material, which is kind of the stud or rafter material that you used in your house. And I've got my drill. The drill has a little cap on it, so when you're ready to use it, you can take the cap off, and when you're not using it, put the cap on for safety. And I've got a piece of wire. The wire is going to run through all the parts of the tree and hold it all together. I'm going to want to grab my ruler from my previous kit. I'm going to need a pencil from the previous kit. I'm also going to need the glue from the previous kit. All right, one of the other tools that is needed, I forgot to mention, is the saw and the miter box and the saw. So there are all the things needed, and if I have some of the clamps the spring clamps from the previous kits, there's a few places where that might come in handy as well. So all of that is needed to build this tree. Now let's get started. To begin, I'm going to just start to, I'll take the pieces out of the bundle, and I'm going to grab my cutting list. And the first thing I'm going to have to do is I'm just going to need to start laying out all the sizes, all the pieces that go into the making of the tree. To do this, I'm going to grab my ruler, and I'm going to look here. The first piece on the list is 5 3/4 of an inch. 5 3/4 of an inch. So I'll put my ruler on there. I'll measure down to 5 3/4 of an inch, and I will put a mark. Now, in this particular case, I don't have to worry so much about the kerf. The spacing and the size of everything is not super critical. So I'm just going to go ahead and start right at that pencil mark, and I'm going to measure out another piece. I have a fairly good sized piece of material left here. So I'm going to look at it. It's almost identical. It's almost exactly 4. So I'm going to check off, I'm going to put a check mark in the box that says 5 3/4, and I'm going to come down here and put a check mark in the box that says 4, and I'm going to measure over to the 4-inch mark and put up a mark. So I'll check off my 4-inch and my 5 3/4 inch pieces. I'll come over here to my piece of wood, and I'm going to measure over to the 4 and put a mark there. So now I have a 5 3/4 and a 4-inch piece that are marked. Now I could write that on there, 5 3/4 and 4, so that I can set that aside and I will remember what pieces are there. Now I'm going to go back and continue on. So the next one is 5.5. So I'm going to put a mark at 5.5. And I'm going to look over here. The next one, that makes 4.25. 4.25 will fit there. So I'll measure over to 4.25 and put a mark. And then I'm going to come over here and put a check mark in 5.5 and 4.25. And I'll write those in there, 5.5, 4.25. So I write those on the pieces of wood so that I remember what size piece that is. And I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to come over and I'm going to grab my next piece. I'll grab my ruler. The next one on the list is 5.25. 5.25. And now I measure over here, and that would give me a 4.5. 4.5. So I'm going to measure over to the 4.5 mark. Put a mark there, and I'm going to write 4.5 and 5.25. Now, when I make my Christmas tree, I'm just going to make sure that all the writing that I do is facing down so that you won't ever see it. So I set that one aside and grab another piece. And I'm going to remember to come back here and check off 5.25 and 4.5. That was the other two that got done there. All right, next is a 5-inch piece. So I'm going to measure over here to 5, and then I'll look and see what's on this side of it. 4.75. 4.75 will fit there. So I'm going to go ahead and start there, measure over to 4.75, put a mark, and I'll write that on here. 4.75, and this one was 5. So I'm going to set that aside. Check that off. Check that off. All right, so now I'm down to the 3s. So I grab my next piece. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to mark off 3.75. Now I have a much bigger excess here now, so now I can start and do the next one down, 3.5. And I still have another piece here, so I look over, I could do a 2.5. So I'm going to check off 3.75, 3.5, and then I'm going to jump down to 2.5. and check that one off. Put a mark there, and then I'm going to write 2.5, 3.5, 3.75. All right, so you get the idea. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to finish checking off all of my my pieces here, and then when I get done with cutting all these out, I'll come back and show you what I do next. So now I'm going to come back with this little tri-square that was in my house building kit, and I'm just going to lay it on here like this, and I'm going to draw a line across the piece all the way so I kind of clarify where I'm going to cut. Make sure it goes straight across there. So that would be like using a tri-square. I could do the same thing with my miter box. I can take the miter box, put the piece of wood in it like that, slide the piece of wood down until it's right on the edge here, hold the piece of wood tight against that lip, and then take my pencil and draw it across. That works pretty easy too. So I'm going to go through and now I'm going to do that for all the pieces. I'm going to draw a line across right where the line is, right where the cut is supposed to take place, and I will do that on all of the pieces. When I'm done with that, I'll come back and show you what's next. Now, the next thing that the instructions here tell me to do is they tell me that I need to mark the center of each of the pieces. I'm going to need a hole drilled in the piece, right in the center. So I need to divide each of these pieces in half and mark the middle. There's a graphic right on the instructions that show me how to divide each of the pieces in half. I'm also going to divide them in half by their width, and then I need to mark the center. As you see here, there's a dot in the center of each piece. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So my first piece I'm going to work with here is, this piece says 5, half of 5. If I divide 5 by 2, I get 2.5. So I'm going to put a light line at 2.5. This piece of wood is a 1/2 inch thick. If I divide a half by 2, I get a 1/4. So I'm going to put a mark at 1/4, and I'm going to put a mark right there. So you can see I've marked here exactly where I'm going to drill the hole by drawing a line across this way and then drawing a line down this way. So this point right here is where I'm going to actually be doing my drilling. And I'll continue to do that now with all the pieces. Now this piece here is 4 3/4. So I'm going to put my ruler on there. 4 3/4. Half of 4 would be 2. Half of 3/4 is 3/8. So 2 3/8 is the middle. I'm going to put a mark right there at 2 3/8, and then I'm going to come over here and put a mark at 1/4. And there is the center of that piece. And I will just continue to do this for each of these pieces. 4 1/2. Half of 4 1/2. If I divide 4 1/2 by 2, I get 2 1/4. 2 1/4. So I'm going to put a line there at 2 1/4. I'm going to measure across this way, put a mark at 1/4 inch, and you can see right there where they cross, that is where I'm going to drill. This piece here is 5 1/4. So I'm going to find the center of that. Half of 5 is 2 1/2. Half of 1/4 is 1/8. So 2 5/8. 2 5/8 would be the middle of that one. I'm going to turn my ruler, measure over 1/4 inch, and you can see right where I'm going to drill my hole there. I will go ahead and do this now on all the rest of the pieces, and I'll come back and join you in a few minutes when I am done. Alright, I have come to this one right here in my list, and it says 1/2 inch, and it says here make a total of 23 of them. And then it says make sure you drill before you cut them all apart. So I'm going to want to lay out 23 of these little 1/2 inch pieces. I'm going to mark all the spots where the hole goes, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut the hole in all of them. I'm going to drill the hole in all of them before I cut it apart. So that's what I'm going to start working on now. I'm going to lay my ruler on this piece like that, and I'm just going to mark every 1/2 inch. So there's a half, there's a half, there's a half, there's a half, there's a half. Now, I'm probably going to run into some trouble at the end once I'm cutting these up. If I'm not careful, that little tiny one at the end is going to be hard to cut. I'll mark it, but we'll see what happens. Now, the next thing that I remember that it said is I need to mark the center. So half of a half is 1/4. If I divide a half in by 2, I get 1/4. So I'm going to put a little dot at the 1/4 inch mark. All right, so I've got that one pretty good. Here's what it looks like. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19. So there's 19 of them on there. I need 23. So I'm going to grab another one here. And I'm going to lay out 4 more 1/2 inch pieces. Here we go. 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, and then I put a dot at the 1/4 mark. In the middle. All right, so there's my 23 pieces all laid out. Now I'm going to cut those before I'm going to drill them before I cut them apart. Some of the other ones aren't going to matter, but this one will. I need to drill them first before I cut them apart. All right, one of the other tools that is needed, I forgot to mention, is the saw and the miter box and the saw. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to set it up here on the edge of my workbench. I'm going to line up my line where I cut with the mark, the 90-degree mark across the center, and I'm going to start cutting. Slide it down. Make the next cut. Now I can do that with all the pieces. I can just cut them all, except for the little tiny ones. Or after I cut a few, I can move to drilling the hole. Now to drill the hole, I'm going to take my miter box. I'm going to flip it upside down like that in front of me on the table. I'm going to take my piece of wood with the little mark right in the center, and I'm going to set that on the upside down miter box. Next, I'm going to grab my drill, and I'm going to take the cap off of it. I'm going to set the tip of the drill right where the X is, and I'm going to start twisting. Push down and twist at the same time. And there it is. It went all the way through. I'm going to take that out. Put the next piece up there. Set the tip of the drill bit right where the X is. Twist and push down at the same time. And there it went through. Pull it back out. Right, and I can just keep doing that in whatever order I want. The key is when you have the little tiny pieces, it's going to be better to drill them while they are all attached to the longer piece, so you have something to hold on to, and then cut them off. Well, I've got my pieces cut. Here's what I've got so far. There's my Christmas tree shape. All the pieces have been cut. That's a pretty good indication that I've measured and cut it right, because I have a nice triangle shape, which is what all of those sizes cut and stacked in the right order should give me. So what's left is I need to add in my little pieces in between, and the trunk and the stand at the bottom, and then I'll have the Christmas tree ready to assemble and be done with it. I'm still working on my little pieces, so let me finish those up, and we should be ready to address the stand, which is going to come next. Right now, I've got a few of the longer pieces that have little tiny sections on them. And again, like I mentioned before I cut them up into little tiny pieces, I really need to drill these holes. So I'm going to work on that for a few minutes. So again, I drill with the miter box turned upside down in front of me on my table. I'm going to set that piece of wood on there, put the tip of the drill bit right where the point is, and twist and push down at the same time. And it doesn't take very long and I can feel it going through. All right, well, you can see I am done with my final little half-inch block, and I have all 23 of those that are needed. And you might find some of them break. You may have to go make some more because they're small. The little hole can weaken it. So just know that you may have to make a few extra ones, but in general, I've got my 23 done. So now I'm basically ready to start assembling the tree. At this point, if I wanted to, I may want to take it out and spray paint it or use some acrylic paint and just paint all the pieces before assembling it. You can do that in whatever order you would like to do it. The tree that I have showed you, my example tree that's right here, I just spray painted it after it was all assembled, but you could do it either way. So at this point, you may want to do your painting before you assemble it. That would be a little bit easier because you're not having to paint parts through other parts, but that's up to you. So let's now take a look at how we assemble all the pieces into the final tree. So to begin with, I need my wire and I need my two 3.5 inch pieces, which are going to become the base. And to start with, it's a little tricky. I'm going to slide one of the pieces down. It sits on the little hook at the bottom, but that piece sits on the table. So I actually need to make a little groove right here at the hole where the little bent piece of metal can sit. It needs to sit up flush with the surface of the board. Otherwise, when I put this on the table, this is going to want to rock around. It'll be sitting on the metal, the little tiny rounded metal wire, not the flat wooden piece. So I have to carve or dig out a little bit of material around that, that hole. Now I can do that with a utility knife, or at home you might get some help from a parent to see if you can figure out a way to do it. You could probably do it with your drill. If I take my drill and I just simply use it to sort of drill a hole next to the the hole that exists. In this case, though, I wouldn't want to go all the way through. I would want to make a little bit of an indentation that goes down a little bit and stops. That's called boring. When you bore into a board, the hole only goes in a small distance and then stops. So let me zoom you in here a little bit closer and I'll show you what this is going to look like. So you can see here I've marked where the hook is going to go underneath the stand, and I've marked where I need to drill out. I need to make a little hole right here, a little groove in the bottom of this piece so the hook can fit up in there flat with the surface of the wood. To do this, I'm going to use my drill. I'm going to bore out several holes here, and boring is a process of drilling. Boring does not go all the way through a board. Drilling a hole goes all the way through. Boring only goes in a little bit and comes back out. I do not want this groove to go all the way through, or my hook is just going to pull through and my tree won't work. So I'm going to take my drill and I'm going to put it on there, and I'm just going to turn a couple of times. Then I'm going to move over next to it, turn a couple times, pull it out, move over, until I've gone all the way across. Well, you can see I've drilled a series of holes right there using my drill. So now I'm just going to take the drill itself and pull it back and forth here a little bit. So there's the wire fitting into the little groove I made. It works great. When I look at the surface here, it's very flat. So I'm done with that little groove, and now I'm ready to move on to assembling the tree. Well, we're ready to start assembling the Christmas tree, and it's going to start with my two bottom pieces. If you remember, there was one of the pieces in my list of things to cut that asked me for three. Cut three of these pieces. And so I have two of them that go here, and the third one is going to go kind of midway up in the tree. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put those two pieces together like this. I'm going to go ahead and take some glue and put in between them. So I don't need a lot here. I'm going to do a little bit. Next, I made 23 or 24 half-inch pieces. How many was it? Make 23 of these, right? So I had these little half-inch pieces that I made 23 of. Two of them are going to fit right here on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and grab two of them. And you can see that there's a cross piece on the very bottom, and then there's one above. On the little bit higher piece, I'm going to glue one of these half-inch pieces. I'll do one on each side. Now would be a great time to use one of the clamps, the spring clamps, from my previous kit. So I'm going to take those two pieces that I just glued together into a cross, and I'm going to clamp them so that it holds that in that position while I'm continuing to work. I've got my first, the little piece on the stand is glued on. I've got my first one glued on. I'm going to put the second one on. Remember, these are half-inch pieces. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my spring clamp that came in my bridge kit. Like that, to glue it into place. Well, I have my stand now made. The two half-inch pieces are glued onto each end, and you can see I have a spring clamp on there while the glue dries. So that's finished. Now I'm ready to begin to build the tree on top of that. So I'm going to start with my trunk, which is the round cylindrical piece that has the hole through it. And I'm going to glue that on there. And as I go here, I'm just going to begin to feed all of these pieces in the correct order onto the wire. Let me zoom you in so you can watch me do this a little closer up. Now, in order from large to small, I'm going to begin gluing and putting each of the pieces down onto the stand. After each big piece comes one of the small, tiny pieces, like that. And you can align them however you want to. I'll turn it like that. So each piece is going to be staggered in a different direction. And I'll just keep feeding them on like this. Until I have the entire tree completed. So let me go ahead and work on this for a few minutes, and I'll come back and join you in a second when I have the tree further along. Well, I'm just about done here. Got my last couple pieces to put on. And I will be done stacking all the parts to make my tree. Now, when I look at this, the shape of this tree, right, then it definitely is a conifer, right? A conifer. It doesn't look like an ash tree or a eucalyptus. It definitely looks like a conifer. Conifers are cone-bearing trees like redwood, pine, cedar. It faintly resembles a Christmas tree even. So, all right, there are my pieces that go together to make the tree. My last piece on there. For this step, I'm going to use some pliers. Unfortunately, I didn't put them in your kit, but I'm sure that around your house, grandpa's house, next door neighbor, uncle or aunt, you'll be able to find a pair of pliers to do this next step. And what I want to do is take this little piece of hanger, coat hanger or metal that's sticking out of the top, and I'm just going to go like this, and I'm going to twist it around so that it sticks up, twists, and nothing can now come off of it. This one here is sticking out about 1.5 inches. That's too long. So I'm going to cut it off. Probably about half of that is going to get cut off. And then I'm going to take my pliers. These are needle nose pliers. And I'm going to twist that around. So it looks like that. So there is my final hook on my tree. Now this could be hung from something, having that hook on it. I'm not necessarily sure that's what I want to do, but at least it makes that option. If I want to take my pliers and smash it down and do something else with it, I could do it. I think I'm going to leave the hook. The last little piece I need to add that's in my bag is I need to add the star. So let me put that on there. So the last piece that needs to be added now to my tree, there's two things I can do. And again, on my tree here that I'm showing you, just because, frankly, it's because I didn't have a lot of green spray paint and I didn't take the time to go and get some. But so my tree is just a natural wood tree. But after this, you could paint it. I would highly recommend painting it. Right? Paint it green like this one. You could try painting some white on the ends to make it look like it has snow on it. In your kit is a little piece of cardboard with a star taped onto it. So I'm going to take that out, and You could spray paint that yellow or whatever, red, whatever color you wanted to. So I'm ready to put the star on. I used a fluorescent highlighter to color my star. I like the color of it, and I didn't have any yellow spray paint. So I'm going to go ahead and color it yellow right here with my fluorescent highlighter. So Sharpies work, a pen works okay. If you had yellow spray paint or yellow acrylic paint, by all means, you could paint it. On my star, I want to make sure that I color both sides. So I'm going to turn it over, color the back side as well. If you spray paint this or paint it with acrylic paint, I would highly recommend that you do the same thing. Wood is like a sponge. And if I put a little bit of water or touch the sponge, a dry sponge to water on one side only, that side starts to expand, and it'll literally cause the sponge to start to cup like that because the dry side is not stretching while the wet side is starting to stretch. That exact same thing will happen to your little thin star. If you only put paint on one side, you're going to probably see that it cups after a little bit of time. So here's my star, which is now yellow, and I can take that and put some glue on it. And I'm going to glue that to the hook that I made at the top of my tree. Now, this would be another good place to bring in my spring clamp. So, grab my spring clamp and put on there. And let it dry. Like that. Now, also in my bag are some red and white beads, and so I can take those out. You can experiment with them a little bit if you want to see where they look best. I think that on my example tree here, I like them best when they are random, when there's white, red, random. So I'm going to take my glue here, and I can just start putting a little dab of glue and alternating red and white. And I'll just put them on. Now, there's about 30 of them. So I'm not sure if there's enough for every one of the branches. So you're going to have to just do this randomly. But I'll go ahead and start putting my beads on the different branches. So if you want to use multicolored beads instead of just the red and the white, you could do that by going and picking up some at a craft supply or Walmart. All right, well, if you measured correctly and cut correctly and drilled correctly in the right spot, your A+ measuring assignment should look exactly like the tree that you see sitting right here beside me. I hope you enjoyed the fun of getting to do some practical application with your math, with your measuring. I hope you enjoyed the hands-on nature of our class and building projects. I really enjoy getting to walk away at the end of a day or at the end of a few hours and see something that I created, or even better yet, to give it to somebody and enjoy seeing them really enjoy the process of getting something that was handmade as a gift. All of the projects that we worked on this semester could probably be given away like that. Grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles, moms and dads, they all love stuff that was created by your hands. So I hope you enjoyed making this Christmas tree, and hope to see you again next time when we build another project here in the Royal High School Woodshop.